Hey, practice owners. Want to wish you a really good evening. I'm thrilled about our guest tonight and the topic. I think it's extremely timely, especially right now. I'm trying to figure out whether to say we're in the mid or the end or the beginning or wherever we are in this COVID thing. Yeah, who knows? But tonight, as the introduction explained, we have Bill Rossi. Bill is president of Advanced Practice Management. And Bill is a very longtime friend of the Profitable Dentist magazine. Bill, I used to say an old friend, and then, I said it to the wrong person one time and she got her feelings hurt. So now it's a longtime friend of the Profitable Dentist magazine. And you really have been around, worked with Woody, worked with the magazine, events, kind of everything we've done for a long, long time, haven't you?
Yeah, actually going way back to the meetings. I mean, I think I first spoke there like in 2001 or two, 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years. And that wasn't, back then, we were talking beforehand, back then, the sort of the nature of this business was that, you went to an event, somebody spoke, you went back, there was a lot of personal interaction. And as you and I were talking about ahead of time, the world is changing in how practice owning dentists get information, how they collaborate. And, it's kind of a neat thing, but there's still the same problems. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. PPOs, everybody's favorite topic, your favorite topic, of course, because you have solutions. But on the pain side of the equation, a lot of our docs, it's one of the topics that comes up when we survey and say, what are the things on your top of your list? And PPOs are always there, but it's gotten a little bit more prevalent as COVID goes along and docs start to look harder at their business.
Right.
And are they making money? Are they not making money? Is it worth being in? Is it worth being out? So, we titled this episode, PPOs, When to Optimize and When to Opt Out. And I think that is a fantastic topic title. And if you're ready, I'd like to jump right in.
Sure, let's go. Yeah. So
I had here, we'd ask you ahead of time what you see as an expert in this field and as a guy who does it every day. It's all you do. What are some topics that you're hearing from your clients? And one of the questions you had put here is sort of post-COVID practice trends in general with PPOs. Can you spend a couple minutes and kind of tell us what those are?
Yeah. And what I do mostly, Steve, is I mostly and my team are involved in the management ongoing advice of a bunch, over 200, 250 offices in the upper Midwest and some across the country. So my bread and butter is actually doing that. But what's happened with this PPO thing in the last 20 years is kind of blown up. And that's why I'm increasingly asked by doctors to help them with that. And I don't know too many people that can kind of broach both worlds. They have to know the practice management world plus the insurance world, because it's kind of risky business. You got to know what you're doing. Well, it was really strange. I had a bunch of pre-COVID, normal times, I had a bunch of gigs lined up where I was flying here or there to do Delta or other exorcisms, I call them, health practices. And all that stopped with COVID, right? I mean, everyone's like, boom, shut down. And I thought, well, maybe in a year or two, the PPO part of the business will come back. I have plenty in my hands working with my clients and holding their hands through this hiatus and everything and all the stuff they're dealing with. Well, as soon as practices started up again this past June, really, I think, is when things really started cranking up. I have never gotten more calls from dentists about this, saying, I want to drop this or I want to drop that. And I think a couple of things are happening. Like you said, they're sitting around, they kind of assess and go, what the heck am I running around trying to catch my own tail on this for 50% or 40% off of my fee, And also, I think there's another aspect. You go, gosh, I survived COVID. I could probably survive dropping Cigna, And so, it did cause doctors to reassess. And then there's another thing, of course, with especially for pedodontists, where they have more, they're trying to turn over the chairs, but there's more equipment, the PPE stuff and expense, all those kind of tacked up. So post-COVID practices have been recovering remarkably well. I'm sure you hear this, but it's just, after they start up, about 20% of my clients had their all-time record month in June or July after restarting.
Mhm.
And and your sound just cut out briefly there, Steve. But anyway, so well, I'll
How we
wait.
sound now? Am I
Yeah,
back?
now you're there. Now you're there.
Awesome. Thank you.
But what happened is there's this backlog, and practices are very busy with this backlog,
Mhm.
and that it's been so good that people are coming back to the dentist, because if we had one bad horror story about a family or something like that, it would have been awful. Now, I'm in touch on an ongoing basis with about 400 dentists in those 250 offices, and plus my PPO clients. And to me, the good news has been there almost every week I get a call from a practice that's got a COVID incident, you know, something going on. A hygienist has it or not that. But it's never been a cluster, not like, you know, 5 people in the staff got it or a bunch of patients got it. It's always been kind of an individual thing, and there's hassles with that. But post-COVID, practices are doing well. I think doctors are assessing the balance in the practice more and getting a longer view. And so that's why I think the PPO topic is still relevant, even more relevant than ever.
Have you seen any changes? I know that I've heard the same thing. July's were records. October, late October into November, not so well, because all the
November's lighter in a lot of accounts because they got through the backlog and they had that reflection from May when they're shut.
Well, what you saw was the patients who would have been in April and May and reappointed 6 months and a day later because of insurance and their PPO. You know, we hurried and got them in July or August. Well, their next appointment is January or, you know, late December or January.
Right.
So there was this peak to sort of scrunch everybody who was due in between March, April, May, and into June, get them in 3 months later, and now there's a hole. And one of the questions that I had asked somebody, you know, went to the insurance companies and said, you know, is there any leeway? Because this is coming. You know, a lot of the docs realized and a lot of groups realized that this is going to happen, that once we finally started bringing them in, there's now this 6 month and a day rule that's going to throw us off. And basically they all said, no, you know, we're going with it. And I had an interesting conversation in a group chat that somebody said, well, gosh, the insurance companies will feel bad about this because they're going to lose all that money. Well, they didn't lose any money. People are still paying their premiums. They're just not coming in for treatment. So there's a lot of sort of insurance flux and how insurance works. And I guess the question is, as PPOs, you know, they really took off not too many years ago because it was a way to attract new patients. And, you know, then, you know, reimbursements dropped and dropped and dropped. So there's all this friction. I do, by the way, to deviate just a little bit, I wrote down here, perform exorcisms. I'm going to use that, Bill, and give you credit every time I do. He said beforehand, I guess getting PPOs out in the context of our topic here, when to optimize them and when to opt out.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm taking a practice off a major PPO, I call it an exorcism because you know, now I'm the old priest and I got to find a young priest. I guess I'll do the rest of it. But for the people, that movie probably dates, there's probably a lot of people that don't even know what that's about. But anyway, yeah, the idea is it almost becomes a kind of a mental thing because the insurance is so ingrained in the practice that to kind of take the practice off the whole mentality of it, without getting elitist. I'm not an elitist guy. Most of my clients are pretty down the middle guys. But to try to get rid of this kind of thing that patients won't like you if you don't participate with their insurance. And my message, doctors, and you have to believe me, is people do like you for more than your network status. And here, the thing is, most doctors, like I'll talk in a meeting and stuff, and I know what they're thinking. They're going, yeah, but in my neighborhood, you know, if you're not with the insurances, we'll never get any new patient calls. You know, and I said blue collar, or it's a neighborhood where my patients really, and the front desk tells me, everyone asks about insurance. And I have to point out that insurance is a factor in how many new patients you get, but it's not the only factor, or even the main factor. There's a bunch of other factors like your location, visibility, hours, Google reviews, website things, staff that are really important. And so a lot of doctors feel that they're only seeing patients because of the PPO, patients only seeing them because of the PPO affiliation.
Right.
And so they join. So for example, doctors like to be busy. So they hear the Anderson family works at the factory that's going to get MetLife. And they go, could you join MetLife? Sure. And then it's really easy to sign up for these things. Can I join Connection? Can I join Dynamax? You keep signing up for these things because doctors hate to lose patients. And they figure, well, I'll get more new patients from it. But I've really looked into this. If you're completely non-par, if you're not with any insurances at all, you will get less new patients. If you add insurances like, let's say, a Delta or a major company and a couple others, you kind of get to mid-range participation and your new patient numbers go up. But if you keep adding more and more and more insurances, the discounts continue to dig in deeper, but the number of new patients doesn't proportionally increase. Conversely, most of the clients I work with are long-term, so I get to see long-term what happens before, during, and after transition, either adding or subtracting insurance. And patients are much more loyal than you think they are.
Yeah.
And they tend to, there's an inertia if you're taking decent care with them. There's an inertia in the practice. So I'm saying this because when I talk about the PPO stuff, I know that most doctors go, well, yeah, but for me, the patients really need the insurance. And I'm going, they do like you for more than insurance. If you're collecting less than 80% of what you produce, chances are you're getting skinned for 10, 20, 30, 40,000 a month in production. If you're collecting like 60 to 70%, you almost certainly can do something about it. But you know, Dennis, Steve, they'll just work harder. And I'll just work harder.
And I've seen two situations that seem to be very common. One is, you know, and as a business guy, the first thing I want to know is what are my costs on anything? You know, selling stuff is easy. Making a profit takes a lot of courage. And, you know, to realize that every, you know, XYZ PPO patient that I have, when they write it down 40%, it's my number one expense. It's more than taxes. It's more than employees. It's more than, I mean,
in a lot of practices it is. It's more than the employee.
And they don't see that. They don't see it as the expense side, the cost.
Because they're not writing a check for it.
Right. And that's really the question is, do you feel that, is there a break point? Is there a point at which you see when you sit down and talk to a practice and go through the exercise that they realize they're losing money on every patient? They're better off not seeing that patient than they are seeing that patient and losing money, filling up that hour of inventory, so to speak. And
well, what we try to do is I try to balance the participation. So I'm going to back up a bit to this the PPO network stuff.
Yeah.
And then I want to answer that question though. So here's the deal. At first there was Delta, you know, the original insurance, and others came on board because of the pressure of increasing medical insurance premiums. Employers pressured dental insurance companies to try to control their costs. To do so in a tiny way, some smaller insurance companies started saying, look at that, doctor, if you agree to a lower fee, at first it was like a 10% reduction, we'll put you on our list. And then it started proliferating. Then Delta had to create their own version of this, so they created Delta PPO. But Delta's premier product became increasingly stingy too. And then what happened is you started seeing networks blossom. Networks are entities like Connection, Dynamax, Zealous, Sun Life. They're really permutating. So now you join a Connection because you have GIHA, you want government employees, and all of a sudden you're signed up with 100 plans. And then you might be with Dynamax that has some overlap, but whatever plan pays you less, that's what you get. And so right now it's gone completely haywire. Doctor, if you're with one of these groups like Connection, Zealous, and so on, if you're with multiple groups like that, that is just not smart. So this is when I recommend you go to insurance. They call them negotiators. They're more like optimizers now because they don't really twist the arms of a bureaucrat. They just basically shop the different networks to find out which networks pay you better. So if you're going to be in a network, you can use them. You can use eDental or Becky Blaylock. Some people use, of course, there's Unlock the PPO. And what these folks all do is try to get you the best deal for the insurance companies. Well, okay, have them do that. But maybe you get 5, 10, 15%. The real money is when you drop an insurance deal, because then you're getting your whole fee. So I say, well, if you have a bunch of networks, consolidate to one network that pays you the best. And then pick off the remaining, the little bits. So usually I start, when I look at with an office, I'm trying to show them how they can start. It's easy to sign up with PPOs. I'm showing them how to unsign. I say, let's start with a little thing. Let's start with a PPO in your practice. Maybe it's Cigna or something like that. And it's 8% of your patients. Let's start with that. And we'll show you how you can lose the write-offs and keep the patients. And then they get their competence up, and then they might drop PPOs till they get to a point of balancing, where they go, okay, I'm at a decent point. I've raised my collection percentage 5 or 10 points. For now, I'm good. So doctors know how to sign up. They need to know how to unsign up. And but the PPO networks really confuse things. Now, you can be in a network like Connection, and you can still kind of carve out of the crowd plans like MetLife or others that you can just drop completely. You opt out of the network with them. So once you got your things consolidated, you can still pull individual plans and drop them. There's some limitations there, but that's kind of the inner baseball. So, Doc, if you've got multiple networks and multiple insurance companies, and if you're collecting like 65 or 70%, but the crime, Steve, is a lot of people don't know that because they're using this deal where they input all the insurance companies' fee schedules and they use the insurance company's fees. So the gross production isn't the gross production. And they'll tell me, well, I only want to count what I can collect. And I go, I want to count how much work you do because production is a measurement of work. It's a measurement of productivity. I want to know if there's a $50 or $60 or $70,000 gap per month. Your collection percentage looks good. You're kidding yourself. How much did you write off to Delta last year? I don't know. Well, you got to be kidding me. And that's really insidious because I commonly work with doctors and I point out, do you know that you're writing off about $70,000 a month? I kind of reconstructed. Oh, yeah. Okay. And so here's the deal. You talk about being an entrepreneur. I always go to this. Think of the guts it took when a dentist first buys a practice or even first joins a practice. Right. Or builds a new facility, or buys a cone beam, or buys a CERAC, or adds a room. Those things are mostly irreversible decisions. And they do it all the time. And I say to doctors, so you just built a brand new facility, you're roaring, you're at almost maxed out, you don't want to build any more space, you don't want an associate, why are you working at a discount? And, oh, if you drop Cigna, big fear, you go, man, you have a lot more guts than that. You've done a lot bigger stuff than this. But let's say I'm crazy and I tell you to drop Cigna or MetLife. No company, please sue me, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm completely bogus. And it doesn't work out. You can always call them up and say, hey, guys, I was kidding. I love you. Can I come back? Mm-hmm. Delta may not do that. Delta's a horse of another color. But, I mean, come on, guys. You can add. Where else do you have a thing where maybe you can add $5,000, $10,000 a month to your bottom line? If it works out, there's no capital outlay. All you have to do is have your head on straight and your staff know what to do. And you're making them more this month, this year, next year, and so on without any capital outlay. But if it doesn't work out, if you find out you're bleeding patients or the economy takes a real long term, you can always rejoin. Mm-hmm. And you were shut down for 2 months with COVID. I mean, if you lost 20 Cigna patients, believe me, it's not going to kill you.
And I think that's the interesting thing to me when I get in those conversations, Bill, is that if you do the numbers and you have the numbers and you say, and you look and you say, listen, you're writing off 40,000 a month or 30,000 a month or whatever it is. And if you say, how about this? Why don't you spend 10 grand a month on marketing? oh my gosh, I'm not going to spend crazy money like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
You know, I'm not going to spend 10
right.
grand a month to get new patients who are paying full fee, but
Mhm.
I'm willing to give up
Yeah,
$40,000 a month
right.
to Cigna to get that same number of patients. And I
Yeah.
think it's, and I don't think anybody's saying just throw insurance out the window. I mean, some people are saying that, but
I don't even say that, and I'm the big
yeah,
exorcist, right? No.
yeah. And it's not that all insurances are bad or all PPOs are bad. I think what you said was very insightful. Once you get into one, then you get into another, then you get into another, and it becomes your sort of your new patient machine. And
Yeah.
that was fine, except now that you've got those new patients, because of the write-off, you constantly need more and more and more low margin, low profit patients. And at some point, I mean, you literally you get to the point where you're losing money by seeing those patients.
Well, there's a
So,
more insidious effect. Doctors want patients to like them, so they join the PPO, so they get the patients, but they can get so they are so busy trying to outrun the discount that they create a practice
right.
that only appeals to patients that want network providers. And that takes you, so it makes you feel safe because you're busy, but you're actually less safe because you're depending on the suits at the PPO to fill your chairs, and you don't pay attention to the other things. So that's another interesting thing, is a lot of times when doctors leave a PPO, I say you can't just leave Delta, you have to be working towards something. So it also gives them a chance to create a practice renaissance where they go, maybe I won't try to grow by seeing more and more people. Maybe I'll do more for the people I see, expand services and so on. So maybe I'll change the qualities of the practice, not just the quantities.
Mhm.
And maybe if I'm closing the gap between what I produce and collect, I can keep my fees more moderate because I'm actually collecting my fees. So poor souls that come in the practice at 30% that don't have insurance get a fair deal because they're subsidizing everyone else. I just talked to a practice the other day, 50% of the practice doesn't have insurance. So they're subsidizing the other 50% that pays 50% because the whole practice had the insurance the guy had. They'd be out of business.
Right, right. And that, so one quick question, I also had something to move on to here. Do you, I've had people tell me that they've been in practices that had, I forget enough, I mean, it was 150 PPOs, or they were participating with
Sure, yeah.
huge number. How many exist? I mean, at some point, and you do the numbers, you do this every day, you know, it's the old 80-20 rule. You got to think that 80% of those people represent, or 20% represent 80% of your PPOs, that they are just, there's a small group of patients that, I mean, you're in PPOs with 2 patients or 3 patients or 4 patients,
Right.
which means you have the exact same time involved in filing claims with this PPO
Yeah.
that you have 3 patients with versus this PPO that you have 300 patients with. Is that where you
Well,
kind of start to trim it?
well, that's why I talked about that network, because you could be signing up for those networks, and I call it PPO creep. All some patients that you previously saw out of network on your full fees, maybe they're guarding or something. All of a sudden you're in network and you're taking a write-off because they expand. So when you look at Dentimex can have 200 different things, and they're different insurance companies across the country, different collections of them. So doctors often don't even know they're with one of those groups or what people are in the group. And the good news is as you try to clear off those groups like Connection, Dentimex, I'm big on getting rid of those. As you clear those off, no one insurance company typically can hurt you. So it's a diffuse effect. It's not as potent as, let's say, dropping Delta, but it's more diffuse, and you still get a benefit. But you don't have any one plan that's like going to kill you.
Okay.
So it's bad because it's so creeping. It keeps spreading into everything. You can't keep track of it. It's good because if you clear that off, then you can get a clear picture of the ones that are really the big deal in your practice, good or bad.
So it's not an all good, all bad. It's
No,
and that's what
no,
you're
and that's why it really
optimizing.
takes some judgment. So some cases you go, hey, be zealous on this stuff, and let's pick off MetLife. Or the big one is a lot of doctors out there don't play it smart with Delta. There's a lot of doctors with Delta PPO, and they think, well, I can't just drop the PPO and be with Premier. In some states, that's the case, but not in most still. Or And so doctors don't even know that they can get like 30% more reimbursement from dropping the Delta PPO to go to regular Delta Premier because they heard that you can't do it, or they didn't look into it, or they don't know they have both statuses. And I'm telling you, if you haven't looked, doctor, if you're with Delta PPO or one of your associates is, and you have not looked into if you have the availability, A, to go to the Premier group, and the feasibility of doing it in your practice, there is a step. I'm not saying everyone should drop Delta PPO. It depends. You have to look at things. But really, if you're playing it smart with Delta, if you have the capability of just being on Delta Premier, you should be. If you're on Delta PPO, I don't think it's worth being the extra discounts and stuff. And if you're from Delta, don't come after me. That's my opinion.
Well, so this is, and to kind of how we kick this off, this is a good time to really start to decide optimizing or opting out. This is a good time to,
yes,
as you sort of, what do you want to say, re-normalize or re-equalize, now's a good time to start looking at those patients, especially if you're a little light in October, November. It's a good time to step back, look at the patients, look at the sort of the whirlwind you just went through. And as you get into, we're all hoping, a normal 2021,
we hope.
Maybe there's some PPOs you need to get out of. Maybe you need to realign a lot of that, a lot of your insurance.
Yeah, and you don't have to get like a new religion or anything. I mean, it might be just cutting back 1 or 2 PPOs. Like I say, you signed up for them like eating popcorn, maybe just back off a notch or two, and your practice will do better than you think it will. And it's just, I mean, I say it all the time, but I'm still amazed at how many doctors will just work harder, and they're working till 11:30 every day for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is getting a point. Like I was doing this analysis earlier this week, and we looked at the PPO fees from a large PPO company, and the fees were, I do surveys for years. I've done fee surveys.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back to 2004 to find fees at the same level that insurance company is paying now. So they're paying doctors, they're paying lots of you fees from 15 years ago, and expenses have gone up in the last 15 years. I know wages have, and so on. And then you had the PPE and stuff. And some insurance companies, like if you're getting $650 or $700 for a crown, they are paying you fees from before the turn of the century. Think of that. You're getting paid at a rate that's before the turn of the century. Does that sound? That sounds like pretty old time. Okay.
You know what? People say, you know why they do that? Because they can.
Yeah, because they can, as long as doctors keep signing up for it. And again, years ago, a chunk of my clients were the Panky Dawson type doctors. My uncle was. He's how I got into this. And so they tended to be non-par and a little elitist. But that was their model. Nowadays, you don't see so much of that. And I'm not talking about it being elitist, but again, how about if you just say, how about a working goal of only giving away 20% of your efforts for PPO write-offs,
right,
instead of 40 or something?
And that's, so one of the things that I always am surprised at is looking at what did you call it? PPO creep, things that start out this big and then creep a little bit.
Yeah,
bigger. And I think that's when you were talking at that, Bill, I had a thought popped in my head. I'm here in New Albany, Indiana, at the Profitable Dentist World Headquarters. I can look out my window and I can see my house up on the hill. My house is actually 700 feet above the level of the Ohio River, which is right over here. So, and this is insurance, not related to PPOs, but it's sort of how insurance works. And I've got homeowners insurance, and I don't know what caused it, but I started to look through it, and it just felt expensive. So I started to look through it, and I had been given, when I went on, I've been given all these neat things, all these features, didn't cost me anything. And then the second year, they added $50 for this and $100 for that. Yeah. And it turns out I was paying like $150 a year for flood insurance because we live by the Ohio River. And I remember calling the insurance agent and I said,
"You're 700 feet up?"
Yeah. Oh, we just threw it in. And then, the second year we charged for it. So you got a year free. And I said, I live on Skyline Drive over here. I'm 700 feet above the city of Louisville. Now, the tallest building in Louisville is about 400 feet tall. It's about 40 stories. So
Yeah.
if my house floods, it's 300 feet below water. And I
You better
said,
be on an ark or something.
yeah, I said, I appreciate this, but how did this get in here? And he goes, oh, it's just a service. Well, the service is they're charging you a bunch more for stuff you don't need. I don't
Yeah.
consider that a service. So, you know, we looked around, but the point is, I think inside any contract like that, there's a lot of things you just don't know that exist. You think it's okay. You're head down seeing patients, and you're right. Suddenly now you're not writing off the 10% that was really awesome 5 years ago, but now it's down to 40%.
That's right. When they sign you up, you might have gotten a good fee schedule,
Mhm.
yeah, but that's what happens. Yeah, after a while, it doesn't look so good.
You're-
But you're just head down, paying attention to patient. You don't even know what they're paying you really. You're just doing the work.
And they're, you know, they love you because you're a customer, but my guess is they're not working every day on how to bill you less. Or how to, excuse me, reimburse
Pay you more.
reimburse
No,
you more
that's,
than you bill them less. But
well, in my world, that's how I see like there's probably 4,000 suits at the insurance companies figuring out how they can chisel dentists for a little bit more.
right.
I'm not being evil, but they're just doing their deal. And I feel like there's like a handful of us in the country that are trying to work for the dentist to try to kind of balance the playing field because you're just getting killed by these guys.
Well, I asked, I you know, was doing what I do. I called back in June, I think, and I was looking for some interviews with some insurance companies on adjusting this 6 month in a day hygiene rule because, you know, docs are going to go, we didn't know how long it was going to be then, but 2 or 3 months
Right.
to see patients. No, but, they said, no, you know, we haven't even thought about it. And I got to thinking, they're not thinking about it because nobody's brought it up. And I called a, you know, I'm not going to name names here, but a very large American dental organization. And I said, is anybody looking at this? Because there's a hole coming. I mean, because there's an insurance rule and dentistry is so independent or insurance dependent,
right,
that a lot of practices aren't realizing that October and November are going to be empty because of this simple rule that somebody could say, you know what, for 2020, the last half of the year, it's now 3 months in a day. We're going to modify our rule. Never even, you know, and it came and it's gone, and it's a problem. I literally get an email every day that says, you know, it's kind of how a lot of practice owning dentists do. Oh my gosh, my October we're at 20% of normal.
November
seems
lighter. Yeah, November is definitely seems lighter up here in these parts.
Yeah, and
although we didn't get the usual September leg, a lot of practices in September that you know, but it's in November this year or October.
So you had down here, you had sent me 6 steps in assessing the feasibility of a PPO transition.
Okay,
so
I'll get this.
I'm a doc and who's paying attention, I said, wow, you know, I don't know. And you went in and looked and you found out you've got some of these that are reimbursing you 60%. And, you know, you haven't looked at them for 3 or 4 years. Sure. What are some of the steps? What are those 6 steps?
Well, yeah, like a lot of times when doctors think about dropping PPOs, they think, well, it's just you pick the PPO that has the lowest percentage payment, but that's not the only criteria. So this is why you kind of have to know practice management to do what I do, because I have to know if a practice is fit to go through a PPO transition. So I look at the practice capacity and momentum. If they're at a point where they can't add capacity or want to add capacity or hours or something like that, and they have a late potential, maybe they're spilling over patients, their basic business systems, recall, treatment follow-up, their website, all those things are kind of atrophied. I go, well, okay, if the doctor's at capacity where he can't really work or expand capacity, why work at a discount? Or if you have latent potential, I know that if you, let's say, lost 20 guardian patients, you can make it up for other stuff in the practice that you're not paying attention to now. Okay. The second step I look at is just the momentum. Is the practice growing year after year? Sort of like, does it have good momentum? The third thing I look at is, and this is more subjective, but basically, is the organization together? Do they have basically well-organized business systems? Are they stable, especially in the administrative area? Like if a doctor calls me and things are chaos in the administrative area, or that sort of thing, that's a contraindication because I don't want to take anyone through this if their team doesn't have their heads on straight. So first you look at the practice and you go, okay, is the practice in a position So if I see a practice where one doctor's got over 2,000 patients, they're getting 30 new patients a month, the doctor can't get someone in hygiene for 2 months. He or she is booked out like mad. The staff is well organized. They aren't even really hitting recall and treatment follow because they don't need to because things are too busy. All those will be positive indicators. If the guy is getting 5 new patients a month, has 800 active patients, the front desk is in chaos, then they're not, I go, nope, you're not a candidate to do this. Yeah. Then I look at the insurance. So the first part is you look at, doctor, are you ready to do this? What's your practical momentum? Then I look at, the first thing I look at is the size of the insurance company. How big a deal is it? Because like I mentioned, you usually want to start off with a small fry. I get calls all the time. I want to drop Delta Dental, and I go, let's take a look at the big picture, doctor, because I'll talk more people out of that than into it. I'll say, I know how to do this, but let's take a look at some other possibilities here. So the size of the PPO in the practice, the next thing you look for is the out-of-network benefits. Like if you are with a certain insurance company like MetLife, and you have a factory down the road and their out-of-network benefits are pretty decent, the benefit set's good. And with MetLife, they can be surprisingly good out-of-network in most cases. That's a factor. If the out-of-network benefits, like at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, with Delta PPO, if you drop Delta, those teachers or professors cannot see you. There's zero benefits. They can see you, but there's zero benefits. So the out-of-network benefits, the second thing. The third part about insurance is how well they pay you. And of course, you want to kind of go after the steeper discounts first, but sometimes the presence and other things are more important.
Okay.
So when we look at those things, it really is kind of like, it does take some judgment, and you go, okay, doc, I think this is the one you should pick off. Let's see how that goes. Or yeah, you're ready for a fight with the big one, Delta. You can get through this. Here's what it's likely to look like.
So, and I think the important thing is you're 1, 2, and 3 that fit the momentum and the organization.
Yeah.
You're basically saying maybe what we alluded to earlier. You're saying, listen, right now I'm writing off 40% to get every new ABC company patient.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to drop them, I need an organization that is geared to new patient attraction, integrating new
they have to, well, and they have to be able to tactfully talk to patients about it, because our method is very face-to-face. And so the team has to kind of be together. If you have constant turnover at the front desk or people don't have faith in the practice. Another thing I do is survey the practice, and everyone says, and these are confidential surveys, the doctor is great, the treatment's great. That's an indicator for me that they could do it because the staff has pride in the dentistry being done. And that's real important because the patients will feel the vibe. That's again what I call the exorcism. The staff realizes patients can like them for more than their in-network status. And their job is to make sure they do like them for more than their in-network status. And you have the right people and tradition there. It can work much better than most doctors think it can.
Yeah, and you also have, your relationship. One of the things that I'm a big advocate of is to have a relationship that's deeper than you being the cheapest or you taking their insurance.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Because again, if that's the foundation of your relationship and they change jobs, you
get a different insurance, then
you either sign up for yet one more insurance company,
right,
which may be worse, or you lose the patient, as opposed to the patient saying, the difference that I pay in an average year is just not enough to worry about. And that's sort of how we've always looked at it. It's just not enough to matter. I like this person, this is my dentist. And we've actually had, my wife is a big corporate employee. So, they have nice big corporate benefits. And there are times when she's moved and, we didn't have dental insurance, and times she moved and we did. We still stuck with the same person. So, it made a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, Bill, it's not enough to matter. And I think that's a thing that you're right. If your staff can communicate that, be on board with that, and the patient says, yeah, it's just not worth the cost or the effort.
And the way we handle things, typically, there's always, whenever you drop a PPO, there's going to be some loss of patients. So
Right.
I'm never high and mighty about that. But if you handle things well and you do it judiciously, not emotionally, rationally, you'll keep the patients and lose the write-offs. It works. It just, and I'm waiting for the tide to turn. Maybe it is for doctors to stop signing up and start pushing back. And we'll know if that's happening if we actually see an increase in reimbursements, which we just don't. I mean, you know, just very small increases. So, you know, but the Calvary, I always tell doctors that when they ask about this or that, I know Delta's being sued and that's fine, but it'll take 6 years. 6 years. I will say, the Calvary isn't coming, doctor. You got to have your own rifle and be able to take out whatever PPOs you want yourself, because the Dental Association can't come to your rescue yet. The world won't come to your rescue. You're on your own, but you have more power than you think.
So you mentioned Delta, and that's one you had said it earlier, dropping Delta. Is Delta like the, you know, the big one? Is that the one that's?
Yeah, it's still, I mean, 50% of the insurance in the United States, Delta, more than 50%, and then the rest is all the others. And so they're all kind of shooting for Delta.
Okay.
And they're the big ones. Now, again, Delta Premier, I think, can be really great for most practices because it doesn't pay as well as it used to. It used to pay at the 90th percentile. That's hard to believe unless you had really high fees. Delta paid the whole thing. That seems like a distant memory now, I'll tell you. But anyway, so, but Delta PPO, I do not think is a good deal. Some doctors have no choice. Some doctors do have a choice, but don't know it. And I'm real careful with Delta because it is one of the more gnarly transitions. The checks go to the patients and so on. But also, if you do that transition, can be the most beneficial. I think.
Do you have a lot that can make that break successfully from?
Well, again, I talk more people out of than not, but I think right now, and I don't work with thousands of dentists, by the way, hundreds is not, and then. But on the PPO part, I think I've got 4 doctors going through a Delta transition right now, 4 or 5. That's kind of not 40 or 50, but a lot of them, others going through other things like Connection or Dentamax. But I think I told you my history. In 2001 here in Minnesota, Delta unilaterally just kind of kicked off 71 dentists. They slashed reimbursements and basically pushed them out of the network. This is where in Minneapolis, Delta is 2/3 your practice. It's not a third like a lot of parts of the country, 2/3 of your practice. And also these guys are out in the cold. And some guys that got kicked out were probably greed heads, but most of them were the kind of guys you want to go to the Panky Dawson guys, other guys that just were dentists that were into dentistry. And Delta basically just said in their doublespeak, we don't like your procedure mix. They couldn't say the dentistry was bad or anything like that, or they were overdoing it, they just didn't like it. So those doctors were all pushed out of network all at once, and that was kind of our baptism of fire up here, and that's how Woody Oaks heard about us and other things, and how we got in the tradition. Well, that's really strong medicine. So again, even I'm a little scared of doing that, and I know more about it than anyone else I know. But there's a lot of doctors that are with things other than Delta that are nicking them, and they can start kind of taking it back the other way.
So how long, and I know I'm sure it varies, but if I came to you and said, Bill, help me exercise a few PPOs, I swear I love that word. I've never heard anybody say.
Get a call from the Catholics or some Catholic council or something. I don't
There
mean.
you go. Yeah. So
I'm referring to the movie.
And you're right. This isn't a thing where you go in tomorrow morning and say, "Hey, Mary Jane, you know, let's cut these 5." What's a good time frame that I should expect to start if I decided that I'm going to start optimizing and opting out?
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just say the process. Yeah. Usually, I suggest that someone calls me. We have a 20-minute conference, and then I can tell if I can match up or do anything with them, or if it makes sense. If it looks good, then we do basically a PPO feasibility and planning. We look into if it's possible to drop a PPO. If so, which ones in which order. The fitness test, all that. That's where I get numbers in practice. And that usually takes, I'm booking out now 2 or 3 months. So it takes, and doctors are booked out that way too. A couple months for that period. And then if at that point, everything's kind of set. If a doctor decides to drop, things are kind of researched for them so they have an idea of what's going to happen. If that's set and they drop, that usually takes another meeting, and the whole process to finally answer your question. To get through a PPO transition takes about 8 months to a year, because
Okay.
we're doing it where we talk to people face to face mostly, unless the insurance company sends letters and there's other things. But it takes about a year. And if you're trying to drop like Connection or something, these big, or Dynamax, it can take a real long time because it's really hard to unplug. They're not in a big hurry when you drop to tell all their various payers. And you could drop Connection and 6 months later, they're still processing you on network. You're like, get off of me, get off. So it takes about a year to really do it. But when you come out the other side, if you're collecting 5, 10, 15,000 more a month, and then that's just on automatic, it's great. And then if you want to later, you know how to drop another one. Or if an insurance company is unreasonable, you can play poker with them. You know, give us a raise or we'll drop. Oh, we're not going to give you a raise. Sometimes, about 1 out of 5 times, with certain companies, which I won't name, when you send in a drop notice, they'll come up. So then you drop something else.
So
I call that PPO poker.
They call your bluff, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I tell someone they can drop, they actually can. So if they don't blink, we don't have to blink. We can take them off anyway. So we've seen sometimes there's one on the East Coast where we did this analysis. The doctor waited a year and goes, okay, I finally feel like doing this. And we sent the notice in, and the insurance company came back and gave him a big raise. And he goes, well, do you think you need to come out for your exorcism? I go, no.
Right.
We're all done. We got it done. He goes, God, I wish I sent that letter to them a year ago.
Yeah.
I wish I had done this a year ago, but it worked out.
You have to know, though, I think going in, like I say, the break even, you know, selling stuff is easy.
Yes.
And if this is my break even and they're below it, it's just, you know, it's no hard feelings. It's just, I can't be a customer if my, you know, crown reimbursement is $423 and it cost me $600 to run this chair.
Well, and again, the equitability about the poor schmucks that don't have insurance that are paying the whole thing. And it just, you go, at what point, if quality is not going to be a variable, and I've never seen dentists go, oh, I'll use a cheaper lab in this one because they're with a cheap, you know, they won't do that. I'll do short. It's just not in their DNA. So then you have one patient, you treat them nice and everything, but they're paying the full freight, while 3 other patients get a huge discount. And at a certain point, just if you really look at it, it should bother you.
Well, and I think there's the key. A good way to sort of wrap this up is if you look at it, and now is a good time, you know, kind of back to the topic here. Now is a good time to be looking at it.
Right.
You know, don't, because my gut is by about mid 2021, you're back to head down, schedule's full. You know, we're not seeing.
Let's hope. I really hope.
We're smooth.
Let's hope. Yeah, we could all use, gosh, wouldn't that be nice? And then you go out afterwards and have a beer.
But you still have time right now to kind of fix some things that become what you do through 2022 and 23 and 24 that, again, you know, back to our brand, makes you more profitable, makes you happier and more secure in your practice, and you're not working harder, seeing more patients just to find out you're making the exact same amount of money and you can't figure out why. Well, it's
high RPM, no torque, just redlining, you know.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think
what's a good place or a good way for anybody who's listened to this and said, hey, I like what you say, and yes, I've been worried about this for 2 or 3 years and, you know, haven't done anything about it. I know I'm taking a beating, but I don't know how or where. And I know you're always very helpful with your articles. I did want to tell people we do have an article in the next issue this is sort of grown out of, you know, we read it and looked at it.
Yeah, it will kind of build on what we're talking about.
Yeah. So how would they get a hold of you if they want?
Okay. Well, my company's Advanced Practice Management. You can Google my name, Bill Rossi, and usually find it. You can call 952-921-3360, 952-921-3360. Or you can email me, bill@advancedpracticemanagement.com. And again, there's no hard sell, there's no pressure, there's no hype. You just call up, we have a frank discussion about your situation. If I don't think we can do any good, we're not going to do anything. I'm not going to waste my time or your money or your time. So that's how they can get a hold of me. But on my website, there's a whole PPO page. There's a dozen articles I think I wrote for the Profitable Dentist on it, and Dental Economics, and the McGill and Collier people.
Mhm.
And so there's tons of stuff you can read, even if you don't want to call, that might help you. But also you can get a feel if you like the way we approach things by reading those articles.
Awesome. Bill, you got any parting thought, any word of wisdom for, some doc out there who's getting back finally? And
I'm glad you're busy again. I'm really glad that, I'm so glad that I decided to be a consultant for the dental business, not the restaurant business or others, I'm really thankful to be part of this profession. I'm really hoping that everyone has a good year next year, and look at this as a way of balancing things a little bit. But thanks for having me on, Steve. This is great.
Bill, thank you for, as always, coming on. You're one of our most requested speakers. And again, because it's a very, very, very important topic. And out of this issue, I think it's great that we've got together and sort of shared this again. It's very timely. And a lot of docs, I think you're right. They get their head down, they don't think about it, and suddenly their, revenue is staying the same, and more patients, and it's just numbers. And at the end of the day, you're right. Dentistry is a very unique profession. 84% of the practice owners are dentists who were trained in dentistry. They're not trained in this. So we really appreciate you coming on and giving it some, giving some structure to it, and a path out of a way to exercise the PPO demons sometimes. So
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Practice owners, thanks, Bill Rossi, Advanced Practice Management. You'll see the how to get a hold of Bill below. And he's always been extremely helpful for at least a couple decades here. And if you can't find him that way, just give us a call here at the Profitable Dentist. And as always, we'll make that connection. So
terrific.
Until next time, thank you for tuning in to another edition of our Driving Dentist series. And Bill, thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
As always. And until then, we'll see you next time.